There are people watching this right now who carry something in their own body they were never told about, and they have carried it their whole lives. You have felt it. I know you have, or you would not have stopped on an old man talking about blood. Something in you already knew. I'm going to say something to you right now that might sound strange, but I need you to hear it because it is the reason you are here. The blood remembers what the family forgot, and it does not remember in a story somebody told you. It remembers in the body, in your bones, in your hands, in the way you wake, in the way the cold feels on your skin, in the dreams you have never been able to explain to anybody. There are 5 of them. 5 things the body keeps when the family goes quiet. 5 marks the old blood leaves, whether you were ever told the name of the people it came from or not. I am going to name all 5, but I am not going to give you the 5th one yet. The 5th is the heaviest. The 5th is the one that wakes people at 3 in the morning with tears on their face and no idea why. Before I hand you that one, you have to understand the first 4, or it will only frighten you. So I will give them to you in order, the way my grandmother handed things to me, slowly, so they would hold. And understand this before we begin. This is not a test. A cheekbone is just a cheekbone. A cold morning is just a cold morning. I am not going to tell you that one mark makes you anything at all. But when 3 of them live in the same body, and then a 4th, and a feeling underneath all of them that you have never once been able to put into words, then the body is not making things up. The body is trying to say out loud what the family stopped saying generations ago. If you are watching this, do me one small kindness. Say something in the comments before you go, even one word, so the next person who finds this in the dark knows somebody was already here carrying the same thing. That is how the old ones did it. Nobody sat at the fire alone. Now, let me give you the first one. The first thing the blood keeps is in how your body meets the cold. I see people who have spent their whole lives being told they run strange. They wake before the sun and cannot help it. Not to an alarm, to something older than any alarm. The house is dark, and everyone else is asleep, and their eyes come open, and they get up, and they go stand somewhere they can see the sky. I see people who feel more like themselves at first light in the cold than at any warm hour of the day. I see people who open a window in the dead of winter just to feel the air on their face, and cannot explain to their own husband or their own wife why they need it. That is not a quirk. That is not bad circulation. That is a body built by people who met every single morning outdoors, who greeted the cold as the first gift of the day, who stepped out before the sun the way my grandmother stepped out every morning of her life, and said 4 words to the sky. Your body still keeps her hour. It wakes you for a fire that is not burning there anymore. Let me give you the second one, because most people carry this one on their own face, and have looked straight at it in the mirror their whole life without ever knowing what they were looking at. The blood keeps the bones of the face. I see people who were told when they were children that they had their grandmother's cheekbones or a great uncle's eyes, and nobody ever thought one thing more about it. Deep-set eyes that seem to be looking at a long way even inside a small room. High, broad cheekbones, a certain weight in the brow, skin that takes the sun and does not burn the way the neighbors burn. A face that shows up in a photograph 3 generations back, disappears out of the family for 60 years, and then comes back on you out of nowhere. A face is not proof. Hear me clearly. I am not a man who reads faces and tells fortunes, and I will never be that man. But blood is stubborn, and the body has a long memory. A feature can go under for 3 generations, hide inside people who never carried it in their own faces, pass hand to hand in the dark, and then surface on a grandchild who looks in the mirror one morning and sees a stranger there who is somehow also the most familiar face they have ever known. That is not vanity when it unsettles you like that. That is not your imagination. It is not a personality trait. It is an inheritance, the body handing you back something the family put away. And here is what I need you to understand about both of these, the waking and the face. On their own, they are nothing. Millions of people wake early. Millions have strong bones in their face. If that were all you had, I would tell you to think nothing more of it. But you did not stop on this video for one thing. You stopped because there are more of them. Because the waking and the face are only the 2 you can see. Let me give you the ones you cannot. The 3rd thing the blood keeps is in your feet, and in what your whole body does the very moment it touches the ground. My grandmother had a saying. She had many, but this one I did not understand until I myself was old. She said the land recognizes its own. She said the ground feels different under the feet of a person who belongs to it. That the earth knows the difference between a visitor and a child come home. And that it answers. I thought it was just a thing old women say. Then I watched her prove it for 89 years. She would step outside in the morning before the sun onto the cold ground, and I swear to you the woman changed. Her shoulders came down, her breath went slow. Whatever she had carried through her sleep left her through the soles of her feet and went back into the earth. Then she would take one deep breath, and she would say, "Thank you for another one." And she meant the ground under her as much as she meant the day. So here is the 3rd mark. I see people who cannot keep their shoes on, who kick them off the second they get through the door, who feel a pull to stand on bare dirt, on grass, on stone, and who feel something settle in them when they do it that they cannot get out of any chair or any pill. I see people who feel wrong indoors for too long, who get a restlessness under the hard indoor light, and a peace the very minute their feet find real ground. That is not a habit. That is not you being eccentric. That is a body remembering that it was made to be in contact with the earth, made by people who slept on it, walked it barefoot, and were buried back down into it. The land recognizes its own, and some part of you keeps walking outside again and again to be recognized. My grandfather used to leave the door open a crack on the coldest nights just to hear the river running. He never once said why. I think his feet wanted the ground even in his sleep. I want you to hold on to that saying, the land recognizes its own, because I am going to come back to it at the very end. And by then it is going to mean something it does not mean yet. But before I give you the fourth mark, I need to tell you something. I am not going to be here forever. And most of what I know, what my grandmother knew, what her grandmother knew before her, was never written down anywhere. It lived in the old ones, and now it lives in me. And I am the last one in my family who holds it whole. So I sat down and I wrote it. 20 teachings, 4 parts, in the order they were meant to be received. I called it the native way. The link is below. But stay right here, because the fourth mark is the one people tell me they recognize the fastest. And the fifth is the one they never forget. The fourth thing the blood keeps is the deepest of the 4 you can stand to hear before the last one. And it is this: the body feels too much, and it feels it too early. I knew a man named Walter, a hard man to look at. Big hands, a quiet voice, 30 years in a factory. Walter could walk into his own house after a shift and know, before his wife said a single word, whether she had been crying that day. He could look at his 4 children across a supper table and know which one of them was carrying a secret. He could shake a stranger's hand one time and feel, somewhere down under his ribs, whether that man meant him well or meant him harm. And he was almost never wrong. You would think a man like that would be grateful for it. He was not. He spent 60 years believing something was broken in him. He thought he was too sensitive for a man, too raw, wired wrong somehow. He drank some to turn it down. It never turned down. I told Walter what my grandfather would have told them. I said, Walter, that is not a broken wire. That is the old blood doing the exact thing it was built to do. Your people lived in a world where reading a room kept you alive, where you knew the weather in your joints before the sky ever showed it, knew a man's heart in your gut before his mouth moved, felt the season turning inside your own chest a full week before the calendar caught up to you. You did not get too much. You got what they had. You have just been living in a world that has no use for it, and that world called you strange for keeping it. That is the fourth mark. I see people who feel the storm coming in their body before there is a cloud in the sky, who walk into a room and feel the grief hanging in it like a temperature, who cried as children over animals and over the seasons changing and could never say why, who have been told their whole lives that they are too much, too deep, too heavy to be around. That is not a flaw in your character. That is an instrument. It is not a defect. It is a message. A woman wrote to me once and said she had felt every one of these since she was a small girl, and had spent 40 years certain she was the only one, and had never once dared say it out loud to a living soul. She is not the only one, and neither are you. And here I am going to say the thing plainly, because you have been waiting your whole life for a person to say it plainly. There is a word for all of this. It is not strangeness. It is not your imagination, and it is not coincidence, no matter how many times you have talked yourself into calling it coincidence. It is memory. Not memory in your head, memory in your blood. The body keeping what the mind was never told. The old people had a simple way of saying it, and I will hand it to you the same way it was handed to me. The blood remembers what the family forgot. And I need you to understand one thing about that forgetting, because you might be tempted to be angry at it, and there is no one here to be angry at. The families who buried this, who stopped speaking the name of the people they came from, who let the language go quiet, most of them did not do it out of shame. They did it out of fear and out of love and out of the wish to keep their children safe in a world that punished the blood. A grandmother who never told her grandchildren what they were was very often a grandmother trying to save their lives. Do not be angry at her. She hid the fire so that the fire would not get you taken. It is not her failing that you are carrying tonight. It is her love, gone underground for 3 generations, surfacing now, in a body she never got to meet. I knew a woman, I will call her Ada. She was 67. She had felt out of place her entire life. She loved silence in a family that loved noise. She loved the woods when everyone around her loved the town. She felt the seasons turn inside her body. And she had spent 67 years quietly certain that something was wrong with her, that she had been assembled slightly incorrectly, and that everyone could tell. At 67, she finally did a little digging into her own family. Not even for this, for something else entirely. And she found a great-great-grandmother from a people she had never once heard anyone in her family name. Not one time. And Ada told me the feeling was not surprise. It was relief. She said, it was not that I didn't belong in the world. It was that I belonged to an older one, and I had been living in the wrong one the whole time. The marks had been telling her the truth her whole life. Nobody had ever taught her how to read them. Now I have to tell you about a man who did not get Ada's mourning, because I promised you the truth, and not only the sweet part of it. I knew a man named Joseph. He was 79. Joseph had every single mark I have named tonight. He woke before the sun his whole life. He had the face. His own mother used to touch his cheekbones and go quiet. He walked his land barefoot into October. He felt everything, too much, the same way Walter did. And Joseph knew. He would say to me some evenings, there's something in my people that nobody ever told me. I can feel it. One of these days I'm going to find out what it is. One of these days. He said that for 20 years. He kept meaning to ask the last aunt who might have known. There was always going to be time. And then there was not. The aunt passed. And then Joseph passed at 79. And whatever the answer was, it went down into the ground with the both of them. I do not know what Joseph was. I only know that he spent his whole life feeling the door and never once opened it because he was sure the door would wait for him. The door does not wait. That is all I will say about Joseph. I think about him more than I want to. And now I will give you the 5th mark. I made you wait for it, and I made you wait on purpose, because it is the heaviest thing the blood keeps, and it is the one that brought most of you here tonight, whether you know it or not. The 5th thing the blood keeps is the dream, and the pull toward the fire. I knew a woman named Ruth who had the same dream for 30 years. She was walking along a river, a fast, dark river, and on the far bank there was a woman sitting and weaving, working with her hands and never once looking up. And Ruth wanted to cross to her more than she had ever wanted anything in her life. And the water was too deep and too fast, and she always woke before she reached the other side, with tears on her face and a homesickness that stayed on her all day long. A homesickness for a place she had never been. 30 years of it. She thought she was losing her mind. Then Ruth did the thing Joseph never did. She went looking. And 4 generations back, she found a great-great-grandmother from a river people, a woman known for her weaving, Mamom, whose name had fallen out of the family so completely that Ruth had to dig it out of an old record like a stone out of the ground. The blood had been sending that dream for 30 years, Ruth told me, just trying to introduce her to somebody. The moment she finally understood, the dream stopped. She wept for a week, not out of sadness, out of what she called reunion. That is the 5th mark, and it lives in the body deeper than any of them. The waking at that same dark hour, with your heart pounding and no reason for it. The dream of water or of fire or of a face you have never seen and somehow miss. And the pull toward the flame, that peace that comes over you near a fire that you cannot get anywhere else. That quiet that drops into your chest the moment you sit down in front of it. When you feel that pull toward a flame you cannot explain, it is because your blood remembers all of the firsts. The first conversation, the first song, the first prayer, every one of them by a fire. And it wants to go back, not to a place, to a feeling. The feeling of sitting with your people around a flame and knowing in your body that you belong. Before I bring you back to the beginning, I want to tell you one thing, and then I will let it go. I am an old man. I am 74, and I am not going to be here forever, and I have made my peace with that. But I have not made my peace with what happens to what I know, because almost none of it was ever written down. It lived in my grandmother, and in my grandfather, and in the old ones behind them, and now it lives in me, and I am the last one in my family who holds it whole. The old ones did not write things down. They spoke them by the fire to the one who would carry them next. That is how it always worked, until the young ones scattered and the fires went cold. So I did the thing they never did. I sat down and I wrote it, all of it, 20 teachings in 4 parts, in the order they were meant to be received, the way I would say them to you if you were sitting at this fire beside me. I called it the native way. It has reached some people I did not expect it to reach. A woman named Pearl, 81, who lost a son years ago and had not been able to say his name out loud since. After the teaching on grief and the fire, she stood at her kitchen sink and said his name 3 times, and then cooked his favorite supper for the first time since he passed. A man named Samuel, 74, hard his whole life, who read the teaching on being water instead of rock, and then called his grown son, and for the first time in years, did nothing but listen. It is not a fancy thing. It is an old man's teachings written down, but it costs less than one supper you will not even remember eating. And I made it that way on purpose, so that the price would never once be the reason somebody went without it. The link is in the description, and there is a code on your screen. It is there if you want it. That is all I will say about it. Now, before I let you go, come back to the beginning with me. I told you my grandmother said the land recognizes its own, that the ground feels different under the feet of a person who belongs to it. I told you to hold on to it because it would come to mean something at the end that it did not mean at the start. Here is what it means. All 5 of these marks, the waking, the face, the bare feet, the feeling too much, the dream and the fire, every one of them is the same thing, wearing a different coat. Every one of them is your body trying to be recognized, trying to be known by something it belongs to. You have spent your whole life feeling like a visitor everywhere you have ever stood. That is not you being broken. That is you being unrecognized. That is a child of the land, standing on ground that has forgotten how to say his name, waiting to be claimed. And you who are sitting there right now, alone maybe, in the dark, feeling all 5 of these, and having felt them your whole life, and never once had a single person tell you what they were. I want to say this to you directly. You were never wrong. You were never too much. You never belonged nowhere. You belonged to something so old that it went quiet before you were ever born. And it did not stop being yours just because nobody told you its name. So take your shoes off and go stand on the cold ground in the morning and take one deep breath, the way my grandmother did, and let the earth do the thing it has been waiting your whole life to do. Let it recognize its own. Light a fire if you can. Sit down near it and listen to what your blood does. If what you heard tonight stayed with you, the teachings are there. The Native Way, 20 teachings, 100 pages, written the way I would speak to you if we were sitting together at this fire. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, which of the 5 did you feel in your own body, long before I ever gave it a name? And how old were you when you first felt it? I read every comment. And if this is the kind of conversation you have been looking for, subscribe to this channel. We are not collecting viewers here. We are collecting people who remember. Come back next week. I am not done teaching yet.